Okay, now I move on to the last topic, how the central bank fixes the exchange rate. So in this section, we need to cover the B1 course. Okay, so especially this section requires the knowledge of B1 course, especially textbooks chapter 19. Okay, so if you are not taking B1 course, then you need to review the textbook by yourself. Okay. Okay, so go back to the lecture. So the central bank can succeed in holding the exchange rate fixed only if its financial transactions ensure that asset market, which is equal to the foreign exchange rate market and monetary market, remain in equilibrium when the exchange rate is at its fixed level. Okay. Now consider the model. The central bank fixes the exchange rate permanently at the level E0. And the falling exchange rate, so recall that if you're taking B1, please recall that the falling exchange market is in equilibrium when the interest parity condition holds. So you can see that this is the interest parity condition. In this equation, R is the domestic interest rate. R star is the falling interest rate. EE is the expected exchange rate. E is the current exchange rate level. So you can see that, so the exchange rate, so you can see that in the interest parity condition, our domestic interest rate should be equal to the falling interest rate plus expected rate of depreciation. So when the exchange rate is fixed permanently, people expect it to remain fixed level. So therefore, EE, expected exchange rate, equal to the current exchange rate, which is equal to the E0, so fixed exchange rate level. So therefore, this term cancelled out. So in the fixed exchange rate, R domestic interest rate should be equal to the R star domestic interest rate equal to the foreign interest rate. So therefore, E0 fixed exchange rate is today's equilibrium exchange rate only if the domestic interest rate equals to the foreign interest rate. So the central bank must hold the domestic interest rate equal to the foreign interest rate by monetary policy to maintain the fixed exchange rate. To hold the domestic interest rate at R star, the foreign interest rate level, the central bank's foreign exchange intervention must adjust the money supply so that R star, the foreign interest rate level, equates the aggregate real domestic money demand and real money supply. That is like here. So note that this is the falling interest rate. In the standard domestic money demand function, here is R, domestic interest rate level. But in this exercise in this model, so R equals to the R star, so which is foreign interest rate. So this is foreign interest rate. Okay. Suppose the central banks has been fixing E at the level E0 and the asset markets initially are in equilibrium. Then suddenly output rises. What's gonna happen? Okay, central bank must restore current asset market equilibrium at that rate E0, given that people expect E0 to prevail in the future. So output rises, domestic money demand increases. Okay, so this is a review of the B1 course. Output rises, then the domestic money demand increases for the demand for the transaction. Then domestic interest rate increases. Then, according to the interest parity condition, currency appreciates. Okay, but under the fixed exchange rate, we need to keep the exchange rate the same constant level, E0. So the appreciation is not allowed. So to prevent the appreciation, the central bank must intervene in the foreign exchange market by buying foreign assets. Okay, the central bank issues money to pay for foreign assets. And this purchase eliminates the excess demand for domestic money. So therefore, increase the domestic interest rate here goes down and go back to the R star level. So fixed exchange rate is sustained by the intervention of central bank. Okay, this graph illustrates how the equilibrium is sustained by the central bank intervention. Okay, again, so if you are taking B1, you're already familiar with this graph, unfortunately. Okay, but the upper graph shows that in the upper graph, the vertical line is exchange rate, and the horizontal line is the domestic interest rate, R. In the bottom graph, horizontal line is also domestic interest rate, and the vertical line is now real domestic money holdings. So the bottom line, the bottom graph shows the money market equilibrium, and the upper graph shows the exchange rate market equilibrium, exchange market equilibrium, sorry. So now the economy is suppose that economy is at point 1 here. So the real money supply is here, and the real money demand is here. So given the real money demand and the money supply, the economy is at equilibrium at E1, at point 1. Sorry. Then this under this equilibrium, domestic interest rate is equal to the R star. And also exchange rate is also fixed in the E0 level. So this is the economy, so the initial economy, so initial equilibrium of this economy. So now output goes up. Output goes up from Y1 to Y2. Then real money demand function goes up, increases. Then economy moves to 0.3 under the fixed money supply. So then interest rate gonna be this level. So which is greater than R star foreign exchange rate level. So therefore, exchange rate appreciates from E0. So this is new equilibrium exchange rate. But this new equilibrium exchange rate cannot be equilibrium because we consider the fixed exchange rate. So we need to sustain this exchange rate level E0. To do so, central banks intervene. So central banks intervene by increasing money supply. Then economy goes to the 0.2. So this is the new economy. Then under the 0.2, R equal to R star. So foreign interest rate level. So then exchange rate also is E0. So this is the initial level. So when output rises, central banks intervene by increasing money supply. Then central banks can keep the fixed exchange rate level E0. Okay, this is how the central banks intervene and how the central banks keep the fixed exchange rate system. Okay, so this is the end of today's lecture. Okay, so far we have covered why do we study fixed exchange rate, the reasons studies fixed exchange rate, and what is the balance sheet. So we introduced the balance sheet effect, central bank balance sheet, and how we record that central bank balance sheet. And also I introduced the standardized foreign exchange intervention, and of course also introduced the standard foreign exchange intervention. Okay, so we reviewed how does the money supply change when the central bank's assets and liabilities change. And also we covered how does the central bank fix the exchange rate by using asset market equilibrium. Okay. So this is the end of lecture. So if you don't taking B1 course, please review this textbook. Okay, please study the textbook by yourself. And if you have any questions regarding to the contents or lecture materials or textbook, so please mail to me. Okay. Okay, so this is the end of the lecture. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the first lecture. Okay. So bye.